You can find this podcast and others at Gun Rights Radio Network, gunrightsradio.com. Podcasting freedom.
Well, hello and welcome to episode 24 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltNPA.com. I am Walt White, of course, and as I said, we are on episode 24. You know, what seems like such a long time ago, around episode 10, I announced that, you know, I was setting these little mini goals for myself, and episode 10 was the first time that I reached one of those goals, and I was pretty excited about it. And I said, you know, the next time I get excited will be around episode 25, because it'll show, you know, growth throughout the podcast and things. And here we are. We're just one episode away. It seems, you know, when you think back around episode 10, I thought episode 25 was really far away and kind of out of my reach. I mean, we're averaging probably 4 episodes a month. So, you know, it just seemed like so far out. And here we are 1 week away. So it's pretty amazing. You know, another thing that's pretty, speaking of pretty amazing, I was checking the iTunes feed earlier this week. Every once in a while I like to pull it up on the browser, just key in something like Walt NPA Shooting the Breeze podcast on iTunes and Google something like that, and I'm able to pull up just a browser-based iTunes feed so that I can see what's going on. It allows me to check on the podcast, make sure everything is updating as it should, and when you do that, it lists the iTunes reviews on the bottom of the page, and I was really surprised to see that I picked up 2 more iTunes reviews, and I really appreciate that, guys. Thanks a bunch. Not only did I get 2 more reviews, I got 2 glowing reviews on the podcast, and that really is fantastic. It made my day. I don't remember who did the review offhand, but I remember I recognized both the names from the Gun Rights Radio Network forums. So, again, thanks, guys. And if you're not a member of the Gun Rights Radio Network forum, head on over there and take part in the discussion. So, what do I have going on for you with the show today? Well, Things have been pretty slow leading up to the SHOT Show in Las Vegas, big industry trade show. I'm sure you're familiar with it. But a lot of blog posts were talking about what they anticipated seeing at SHOT, coverage they were looking forward to seeing, different media day coverage things, or just media day stuff that was going on. There was a lot of back and forth over some really asinine things a guy said from, I believe he's the president, from Guns America, said about bloggers and bloggers attending the show. There were a lot of people that took offense to that. I was one of them, even though I don't really consider myself a gun blogger. You know, just some of the things he said really, they kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And as a consumer, or as a potential customer of Guns America, that just really rubbed me the wrong way and kind of turned me off to the company. But that's kind of neither here nor there. So as a result of the week being kind of slow, I decided to do 2 pieces of featured content and offset it with 4 pieces of news. I came across a handful of really decent, interesting news to talk about, and I was kind of struggling with a way to get it all into the show. And when featured content was kind of slow, I thought, you know, we'll just mix and match. We'll get 6 pieces of total stuff all together, and, you know, we'll call it a day. So that's where we're at. And we can roll right on into the podcast, or roll right on into the news. I guess we've already started the podcast, so let's get to the news. Well, up first in the news, it seems as though the fun just doesn't stop in New York. Last week I talked about a tourist from Tennessee, and there was another tourist. I forget where he was from, but both were arrested on gun charges for trying to check their weapons in New York City. They were tourists. They came in. They were unaware of the laws of the land, and now they're facing potential jail time over it. There's a mandatory minimum sentence, so they're definitely facing jail time. It just could be potentially really long and really bad. As if it wasn't already bad. Now I'm kind of, rambling, but it would seem as though the fun doesn't stop in New York. Earlier this week, I came across an article on another tourist busted in New York on the HuffPost blog, and it is entitled "Fred Van Kirk, Ohio tourist busted for gun possession in NYC hotel." A 59-year-old tourist was busted over the weekend for having not one but 3 guns in a New York City hotel room. Fred Van Kirk from Columbus, Ohio, ordered room service to his room in the Radisson Hotel in Midtown on Saturday morning. When a hotel employee came to deliver the food, she spotted Van Kirk's .357 Magnum on the nightstand and had reported it to hotel security, the New York Post reports. When officers arrived to his room, Van Kirk reportedly said, "I have 3 guns in the hotel room. Is that what this is about?" Police found another .357 Magnum revolver and a .45 semi-automatic and at least 1 box of ammo, according to court papers obtained by the New York Post. Van Kirk, who has a gun license in his home state, told police after being arrested that he had been in New York roughly 3 weeks and was carrying the gun for protection. The guns, plural, for protection. I would assume he was swapping them out, and not carrying 3 at one time. That's kind of neither here nor there. But anyway, Van Kirk was charged with 3 counts of second-degree gun possession and is being held on $50,000 bond, according to court papers. He faces a sentence of 5 to 15 years per count if convicted. Tourists in New York City have had issues with the city's gun laws as of late. In December, a Tennessee nurse was arrested for trying to check her .32 caliber pistol at the 9/11 memorial. In September, an Indiana jeweler was arrested for trying to check his .45 Ruger at the Empire State Building, according to the New York Post. So, it's really unfortunate. Here you have another tourist in New York City, although he was in there for quite a while, 3 weeks. But at any rate, he's kind of going about his business, oblivious to the law. Orders some room service. Someone spots the gun. He gets arrested on 3 counts of weapons possession charges. And the really sad thing about this is he had the guns to protect himself, and no one was hurt. It's kind of like a victimless crime. And he's facing 5 to 15 years per count if convicted. 3 counts at 5 to 15 years. So anywhere from 15 to 45 years in prison he is facing for having 3 guns in New York City. I think that's absurd. And these gun charges are really getting out of hand when you have people that are making honest mistakes. Granted, he should have known the law when he went to New York, and there should be some punishment for his actions. However, the punishment just doesn't fit the crime in this case. 15 to 45 years is absurd for a 59-year-old tourist being in New York City and getting busted for merely trying to protect himself. Well, for the second piece of news, I have a resolution of sorts to a news article that I did in the past. I don't remember precisely what episode I talked about it, but a few episodes ago I talked about Mark, I believe it's Metzger? Mark Meckler from the Tea Party Patriots. He was arrested in New York City for trying to check his gun on a Delta flight. Apparently what happened was he was flying somewhere else, and apparently there were some sort of plane troubles. Plane lands in New York. He winds up spending an extended period of time there. He left the airport, came back a short period of time later, and then tried to check his gun as you're supposed to through Delta, and was arrested. And he was facing some pretty steep charges. Now, there's been sort of a resolution to this, and this comes from the Daily Caller. This was published on January 12th, and it is entitled "Gun Charges Dropped Against Tea Party Leader." And this same article has been spun in a variety of ways depending on whether you're pro-gun or anti-gun. Just the title alone has been incredible. But the article goes on to say, felony gun charges have been dropped against Tea Party Patriots co-founder Mark Meckler, who on Thursday agreed to plead guilty to a lesser charge of disorderly conduct and pay a fine. In an episode that outraged Second Amendment advocates, Meckler in December was arrested at a New York City airport after attempting to check a locked gun box holding his Glock 27 pistol and ammunition with a Delta Airlines ticket agent. Authorities said he was arrested because, despite holding a concealed carry permit for his pistol at home in California, he did not have a gun registered in New York, where he was attempting to board the plane. On his blog, Thursday, Meckler called the episode a horrible nightmare for my family. Recalling being arrested, he said, "To say that I was stunned would be an understatement. I have always considered myself a law-abiding citizen. I have never been arrested before." He said authorities won't give him his gun back, calling the decision, quote, "government robbery," unquote. "There is no law that allows them to confiscate a weapon in this manner," he said. "They simply say no when you ask for your weapon back. This is apparently their policy. It is done regularly in New York." And that's the end of the article. It's kind of short and sweet. There's a much, much longer article on Mark Meckler's blog, which I would suggest you click through and read. And he kind of talks about the ordeal and what's going on with his gun at the police station, or being held by the police. Basically, his attorney is advising him, or is making him aware that the court fees are going to be more than the firearm is worth. And I guess he's insinuating that Mark should just kind of let it go and let them keep the gun. He should just buy a new one. But and some other stuff is discussed on Mark Meckler's blog, and it's well worth reading. It's just entirely too long for me to try to read it to you. So head over there, check it out, and get sort of a broader picture of what's going on. The interesting thing here is that he pleaded down to disorderly conduct. Now, it's easy for me to sort of armchair quarterback this thing, sitting back and saying he should have fought it. He was perfectly in the right to do what he did. These were unjust charges, and taking a plea for disorderly conduct is wrong, and he should have fought it to the end. You know, it's easy for me to sit here and say that. You know, I don't have to deal with the ongoing battle. I don't have to deal with the financial burden of all these court fees and everything else that's going on. So it's just easy for me to sit back and say stuff like that. But ideally, I would have liked to have seen maybe the Tea Party Patriots pick up some sort of collection to help him fight this thing through to the end, if he was willing to do so, of course. You know, there's a lot of time and energy that needs to be invested in that sort of court battle, but I don't think he was in the wrong. I would have liked to have seen this thing go the distance, and maybe create some sort of court record or court documentation showing that New York City is breaking the law by disregarding the Firearm Owners Protection Act, and I don't know, maybe it would help ease the burden for the next person that gets arrested in New York while trying to check a gun legally, or as far as the feds are concerned, legally, and you know, New York just disregarding it. So ideally, I would have liked to have seen it go further. I would like to see him fight for his gun to get his gun back too. But again, it's easy for me to say that, as I don't have to put forth the time and energy and finances it takes to do something like that. So there you go, news item number 2. And I'm going to try not to make this entirely New York-based news. I think we're going to roll into another city next. Well, before we get started with the third news item, I kind of want to call a little bit of a timeout here and talk to you about something you may be hearing. I'm dealing with some congestion that just sort of crept up on me really suddenly. Earlier on in the day, I had a little bit of mild congestion. I work in a wood shop, and we've been working with some Spanish cedar as of late. I'm kind of allergic to it. I always get really congested when I get around it. Even though I work in the office, I don't work out in the shop. Sort of in passing, I get around the stuff and I deal with some minor congestion throughout the day. It's usually not a big deal, and I really wasn't expecting it to interfere with the podcast at all. However, I sat down, I lit up a cigar, and I guess the mild congestion that I had from being around the dust earlier on, or just a few hours ago, coupled with the cigar smoke that's in the air, my sinuses are like plugged rock solid shut. And I'm trying to make it not too obvious. As I was reading that first piece of news, I could just feel my sinuses swelling shut, and I just kept trying to soldier on and get through with it. So my apologies if my voice sounds a little weird. I feel perfectly fine. I'm all congested, but I in this case I am recording this video or this podcast at the last minute. So there is no, I'll just turn this off and come back to it later. It's either now or never. Well, I shouldn't say that. I could probably wake up at about 3 a.m., about an hour and a half earlier than usual, and scramble and get something together and post it by noon. But, we're just going to kind of run with it, and it is what it is. So, now we call the untimeout, or timeout over, and let's get rolling into news item number 3 before this podcast gets really, really long like the last one. So, excuse me. News item number 3 comes from the Sacramento Bee, the PR Newswire. This was published on Monday, January 16th, and it is entitled "Homicide Drop While Gun Ownership Rises Shows Anti-Gunners Wrong," says CCRKBA. That's one hell of an acronym. I can't wait to have to read that to you. But anyway, Bellevue, Washington, January 12th, 2012. PR Newswire, US Newswire. This week's revelation by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention that homicide is no longer among the leading causes of death in the United States at a time when gun ownership is an all-time high shows that the gun ban lobby has been wrong. The Citizens Committee for the Rights to Keep and Bear Arms said today. Citizens Committee to Keep... Yeah, alright. That's where that CCRKBA comes from. I was expecting it to be much longer and more complicated than that. So anyway, the CDC's report for 2010 that removes homicide from the top 15 leading causes of death in this country coincides with a period of record high gun ownership, said CCRKBA Chairman Alan Gottlieb. At the same time, increasing numbers of citizens have obtained concealed carry permits and licenses. This is pretty strong evidence that rising gun ownership does not translate to more violence and murder. Gottlieb, co-author of the newly released Shooting Blanks, Why Facts Don't Matter to the Gun Ban Crowd, with Dave Workman, noted that the CDC has long been a source of data exploiting gun prohibitionists. I wonder how anti-gunners will try to spin this report, he mused. Gun control extremists will have a hard time explaining how, after years of repeated predictions and warnings that more guns in private hands will result in more mayhem, that homicides are no longer among the top causes of death in the United States. Gun banners can't have it both ways, Gottlieb continued. If the data had shown murders on the increase, you can bet your life savings that they would be screaming, "We told you so," on every front page in America. Gottlieb said the CDC report is just one more demonstration of how wrong anti-gunners have been in their campaign of fear against private gun ownership. This new information correlates with the national crime trends over the past few years, showing declining violent crime with gun ownership has increased, he concluded. You simply can no longer demonize gun ownership for the Second Amendment as a leading cause of crime. With more than 650,000 members and supporters nationwide, the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms is one of the nation's premier gun rights organizations. As a nonprofit organization, the Citizens Committee is dedicated to preserving firearms freedoms through active lobbying of elected officials and facilitating grassroots organization of gun rights activists in local communities throughout the United States. I ran out of breath on just that one sentence. It was so long. Anyway, the source of this is the Citizens Committee Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. So, little interesting post put together by a pro-gun organization, which points out that homicide is no longer in the top 15 causes of death across the United States. So, it's pretty interesting. I like how they kind of take a little swipe at the anti-gunners who have been screaming about all this for so long, and I think it all makes sense. More guns in the hands of private citizens means, or at least to me, it means less likelihood of violent crimes happening. If you're creeping about the streets and you're going to rob someone, I think you're less likely to rob someone that may have the potential to kill you with a concealed weapon. So it's, I don't know. This article makes complete sense to me. I'm sure if you're on the other side of the aisle, you'll read this thing and you'll say, well, that doesn't make any sense. But, I guess it all depends on where you stand. I personally think this is a fantastic article, and big thumbs up to Alan Gottlieb. It's amazing. I just read his name and I completely forget it. I don't completely forget it. I just don't want to say it wrong, even though I am guessing at this point. So, there is news item number 3. For the fourth and final piece of news, I have something that I came across today, and it's pretty short. It comes from Cron.com, and I believe it was published today. But it goes on. The article is entitled, 15-year-old Texas City girl uses her father's gun to scare off burglars. The article goes on to say, a 15-year-old Texas City girl is safe after police say she turned a gun on 2 men who broke into her home, according to the Galveston Daily News. According to the story, the girl was home at about 1 p.m. when she saw 2 men breaking into her home. She called her family and the police from a bathroom before finding her father's gun and confronting one of the men who was attempting to steal a pickup truck from the garage. Another man was inside the house. They both ran away. And from the story, there's just a sort of like a subtext thing, and it goes on to say the girl's aunt Shamiqua Walker already was on her way to the house when she got a harrowing phone call. All I could hear was a loud noise, and she was telling them, "I've got a gun, I've got a gun," and she was telling me, "Auntie, help me, help me." I told her I was on my way, and the phone went dead. She said tears trailed down her cheeks. When Walker got to the house, the burglars had left, but she didn't know that. The door was wide open and I ran in, she said. I made sure my niece was okay and I grabbed the gun. My brother's bathroom door was closed, so I said, if anyone is in there, you better get out because I'm about to shoot. I didn't get a response, so I kicked in the door, pointed the gun, and didn't see anyone in there. I went through the house, I opened the closets, making sure no one was in there. There is a video portion of this news article or news report, and it's a little bit different. It explains that I guess the girl was getting a shower, and when she came out of the shower, she found 2 people in her house. They had already ransacked the house, and one of the individuals were trying to, I guess they were trying to steal the father's truck out of the garage. And I guess she picked up the phone, she started making phone calls, she grabbed the gun, and she confronted the robbers. One guy took off, the other one tried to he ran to the garage or something, was trying to get in the vehicle to get away, and then she followed him out to the garage and he took off, when she was pointing the gun at him. So it's a little conflicting between the written part and the video portion, the actual like news thing that they aired on TV. At the end, they cite some organization for the proper procedure for a minor to deal with an intruder or something, and the first thing they say is call 911, then call your parents, and then get to a safe place. I mean, think about the courses of action here. Stay in the house, get to a phone, call the police, then call your parents, and then get to a safe place. Shouldn't it be something along the lines of get to a safe place, then call 911, and then call your parents? Kind of backwards. The girl had absolutely no firearms experience. I would assume that when she called her parents, they told her where the gun was, and I would agree with that. Okay, if you're in imminent danger, the only thing that could potentially save your life is this firearm. It really sucks that the girl had no idea how to use it. However, she was capable, or she was able to use it in order to get the robbers to leave. No one was hurt. That's great, and I really commend this young girl for doing what she had to do to keep herself safe and to keep her home safe. The situation isn't ideal, but then again, no attack is ideal. I mean, that's kind of counterproductive, but pretty cool article where the girl made it out okay, unscathed. She's got some emotional damage from all this, but that's to be expected. Well, at this point in the podcast, it is time for featured content, and basically this is just some stuff that I came across on the web and I thought was cool enough to share. Unlike the news, I'm not going to read this to you. I just want to present you with the information, tell you about it a little bit, and then get you clicking and checking it out on your own. So the first piece of featured content, actually both pieces deal with IDPA, which is odd because I don't shoot IDPA. I just find it interesting, and this was something that I think could apply to me as a USPSA shooter. And that is, this comes from Gun Nuts Media, and it is IDPA TV Simple Practice Sessions. And this is Caleb from Gun Nuts Media doing some video on a simple practice session for IDPA, pretty much just as the title explains. And what he's doing is he's presenting you with basically a 150 round practice session that you can do at the range, where you're not going to gobble up several hundred rounds, and it allows you to practice a broad range of skills. You're doing some speed work, then you're focusing a bit more on accuracy, then you're testing yourself on speed again, and there's a baseline comparison at the beginning, at the end. You're doing the fast drill from pistol training as a baseline. Then from there you're going to do a variety of other drills, a specific number of repetitions, and then you're going to finish it up with, I think, two of the fast drills to compare how you started out versus how you ended the practice session. And you can kind of gauge where you fall in, or you can gauge your practice session by how the first and last drill worked out for you, because they're the same. So I thought it was pretty interesting. I'm kind of curious how I can apply it to USPSA. There are a couple of things in this drill, or in this practice session, that deal primarily towards IDPA. There's a lot of slide lock reloads. In USPSA, we tend to dump a lot of magazines with rounds in them, and we don't go to slide lock very often. It's a good thing to practice. However, we do just a lot more reloads with around the chamber. So I'm kind of looking at this and wondering how I can manipulate this just a little bit to get it to work for me as a USPSA shooter. Obviously, I can swap out the IDPA target for a USPSA target, but I think I'm going to make little tweaks here and there, and sort of, I don't know, tailor this to what I think would be better suited for me as a USPSA shooter. Either way, whether you shoot USPSA or IDPA, or you're just a casual shooter, I think this video and this practice session will make you a better shooter. There's a lot of really good stuff here, and it's definitely worth watching. I'll embed the video in the show notes. You can check it out there, or you can click through and watch it on Gun Nuts Media. But either way, first piece of featured content is IDPA TV's Simple Practice Sessions from Gun Nuts Media. Well, like I said earlier, both of these pieces of featured content deal with IDPA. And the second one comes from Gun Free Zone, Miguel. And I know I talk about a lot of stuff from Gun Free Zone. Miguel's blog is one that I read pretty frequently. And with a lot of gun blogs, I have a tendency to do a lot of scanning. I'll just kind of cruise through my RSS feed. And, there are some blogs that I do a lot more scanning and very little reading. Miguel's blog is one of the ones where I do more reading than I do scanning, which is why a lot of his stuff pops up more often. I just find myself reading a lot more of his stuff than other people's content. Not that other people's stuff is bad, I just kind of like the way Miguel presents information, and it's just enjoyable to read. But anyway, the title of this blog post is IDPA match. Sometimes you shoot like the Angels, sometimes you crash and burn. And it's sort of the tale of a bad match. And it's kind of funny because he takes you on this trip, and you're following along the story kind of in his shoes. He's talking about how, he was kind of busy, and then, he's busy because he's running the match, and then he shoots the first stage. Well, he doesn't read the stage description, so he totally blows the first stage, and he's all finished, and everyone's kind of around him snickering and laughing, are you going to shoot the rest of the stage? And he does, and ends up bombing it because of that long delayed wait in between when he holstered the gun and when he was standing there waiting for the safety officer to clear it. So, you would think after something like that it would get better, but the story just kind of spirals down, and he talks about the second stage where things got worse, and then you think it's got to get better after this. It doesn't. It just gets worse, and then there's the fourth stage, and then things start to get better, but then they get worse, and it's you kind of feel bad for him, but at the same time you're laughing a little bit because you keep thinking, how is this going to get any worse? He's just bombing this match, and it's kind of amusing, but not really. There's a lot to learn here, so there's definitely a lesson in this mildly amusing story, and it's well worth reading regardless of whether or not you shoot IDPA. It's just kind of fun, and it's kind of I don't want to say a tall tale of a bad range session, because it's not quite a tall tale, because it's precisely what happened, but well worth the read. So head over to Gun Free Zone and check out IDPA match. Sometimes you shoot like the Angels, sometimes you crash and burn. Well, it is time for the cigar and drink pairing portion of the podcast, and if you thought things were not going my way earlier on with the congestion, they're only getting worse. In between breaks, I took some allergy meds, and fortunately they're halfway working. I'm clear on one side and congested on the other. It's enough to get by, but where that is sort of a silver lining to all of this and things are getting better, my cigar on the other hand has sort of self-destructed. The cigar that I'm smoking in this episode is a Crowned Heads Churchill. Or, I'm sorry, it's a 4 Kicks Churchill by Crowned Heads. And I received a sampler of these cigars last week. I got a very unexpected package from John Huber, one of the brand owners, and inside were 4 Crowned Heads cigars. Wow, I'm getting these all mixed up. Crowned Heads is the sort of the parent company, the holder, and 4 Kicks is the cigar line. So if I start interchanging names, I apologize. I'm talking about the 4 Kicks. But at any rate, John sent me a sampler of 4 Kicks cigars. There was one of each size in the line. A Churchill, I believe one was a Corona Gorda, a Robusto, and a Bellicoso. And I immediately tore open the pack and smoked the first one. It was beautiful, loved it. The following day I smoked the second one out of the box. I decided to try to slow down, and then I didn't have one the next day, but I smoked the third of 4 cigars the following day, and I would have tore into this Churchill much sooner had I not wanted to feature it on the podcast as the cigar and drink pairing. So I held off on smoking it until now, and it's not the best of samples to be doing a cigar and drink pairing with, because as you can see on the camera, the wrapper leaf is pulling apart. In between puffs, I had the wrapper leaf get stuck to my lip, and I ripped off a piece, and it's an absolute mess. At this point, I probably have more wrapper pulled away from the cigar than I do wrapper against the binder, and that's kind of unfortunate, because the cigar tastes great. It's very rich. It's got a very dense smoke. It coats the palate well. It's got a creamy texture to it. In terms of body, it's probably medium to full. In terms of flavor level, it's a little more towards full, but I guess medium to full qualifies, or medium to full is fitting. Smoke volume is great. The burn, despite all this wrapper leaf pulling off, has been doing really well. The ash is fairly light in color. The burn line is fairly even where the wrapper is in contact with the binder, it's burning well. Where the wrapper is pulling away, it's just an absolute mess. So, despite this cigar being absolutely hideous right now, I really, really enjoy these cigars. I had the opportunity to try the pre-release blend. I guess is the best way to put it. Me and the rest of the guys from Stogie Review had the opportunity to try some sample blends, and we put together some of our thoughts and sent them over to John Huber, who took everything into consideration. It wasn't just Stogie Review; it was a handful of other bloggers as well. But we kind of put our thoughts together, sent them out to John, and then we got a second tweaked sample, smoked that, and then shortly after that, it was announced that Ernesto Perez Carrillo was making the cigar, which is a manufacturer down in the Dominican Republic. He's probably one of my favorite people in the industry. Very humble. He does just fantastic stuff, and he's an absolute joy to talk to. So John Huber announces that 4 Kicks is being made by Ernesto Perez Carrillo, and then shortly after, the cigar was released to the market. I didn't get a chance to try any of the production samples until John sent me some samples, and that was about a week and a half ago. I'm kind of falling in love with the line despite these really bad wrapper problems that I'm having, and I would definitely suggest you try them if they sound appealing. Ignore the one that's falling apart. All 3 of the other ones that I smoked were just outstanding cigars. I'm pairing this with a cup of just straight up black Caribou coffee. Nothing special. Again, really do enjoy the cigar, but it's not doing really well, and I'm probably not going to be smoking it for much longer. I'm going to be taking the band off soon, and then I don't know what's going to happen to the wrapper after that. It's probably going to come completely off. So if you're interested in trying the Crown Heads, despite how bad it looks, trust me, it's a really good cigar despite how bad it looks. You can do so by ordering them from my preferred retailer, which is Buckhead Cigar down in Atlanta, Georgia. If you'd like to pick up the phone and give Mike a call, you can do so at 404-844-0400. If you'd like to see some of the cigars that Mike has on sale, and I think the Crowned Head line is among those cigars that he has on sale, you can go to AskTheCigarGuys.com and look up pricing on 5-pack and boxes. If you'd like to just shoot Mike a message and see what he's got in stock, or ask him about a particular cigar, you can do so in a variety of ways. The easiest way is probably Twitter, and you can do so with Mike as @BuckheadCigar. Mike is also on Facebook and Google Plus as Buckhead Cigar. So, again, if you're interested in trying the cigar, I would suggest using my preferred retailer, who is also a gun guy, so you'll be kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, supporting both a cigar guy and a gun guy, and my preferred retailer. Well, for the discussion part of this episode, I want to talk about something that just happened to me recently, and it's kind of been a long time coming. Back in July, I shot my very first USPSA match. And when I shot that match, I was not a USPSA member at the time. I was sort of testing the waters. I went out to a match, I shot it, and then if I liked it, I was going to join the organization and shoot more. I wound up having a great time, joined the organization a couple of days later, and started shooting more. That first match that I shot contained 1 classifier stage, which is used to generate a classification or a ranking based on a uniform stage that's presented across the country. So everyone shoots this stage the exact same way. It's set up the same distance, same course of fire. Everyone shoots the same stage, and there's a variety of them. And then your scores are sort of compared nationally, and you're given a ranking based on your score. Well, you need 4 of these classification stages in order to get a ranking. So I shot my first match, and I wasn't a member, so that classification was kind of thrown out. In August, the club that I shot the first match at was holding a Glock Shooting Sports Foundation match. So the USPSA match didn't happen. So I lost August. When September rolled around, they were doing a multi-gun event at this club, and I was forced to go elsewhere. I actually shot a match down at Lower Providence, and I had a really good time. It was my first time there, and that's where I picked up my first classifier. So by September, I had one classifier stage, and in late November, the season was going to end. So it was looking like I wasn't going to be classified, and I was kind of concerned about that. One of the things I wanted to achieve this season was to get classified so that I can get a baseline of how I was shooting and set up goals for next season. Well, October rolled around, and there wasn't a classifier stage incorporated into the next Lower Providence match. So October rolls around, I still only have one classifier match. And fortunately, when November rolled around, I was able to attend a 4-stage classifier at York. So at the very last minute, one of the last matches of the season that I shot, I was able to get 4 more classifier stages in and get into the automated system where all your classifier scores are looked at and you're given a ranking. Well, scores weren't submitted in time to make the December automated classification system. So December I was kind of bummed out because I didn't have a ranking yet, and then when January rolled around, it wasn't looking like the scores were going to be posted in time. For whatever reason, it just took a really long time for these scores to get up on USPSA, and then finally when they did, I didn't know if they were going to make the cutoff for the January classification. Well, I made it. I got in. I sort of rushed to the computer on the 15th. Like a kid on Christmas, I got all excited. I punched in USPSA.org. I looked up my membership number in the classification thing, and lo and behold, I had a classification. Now, leading up to this, I didn't have my hopes set really high. I had a feeling that I was going to classify as a D shooter, which is the lowest ranking, which is, I believe it's something like anywhere from like 2% to 40%. And the percentage is the percentage of points scored on the stage versus the nationwide system. Or I'm not quite sure how it works, but D is up to 40%. C is 40% to 60%, and then you go up gradually as you go up the letter scale. So I had a feeling that I was going to classify D. However, when I was doing when I was looking up my scores and comparing my match results to everyone else that was shooting at these given matches, I was seeing that I was falling in sort of the middle of the pack with the rest of the C-class shooters. So I was keeping my finger crossed that I would make C-class. Although, kind of in the back of my mind, I was expecting D. When the classification rolled out, I was ecstatic to see that I made C at something like 44.5%. So 4.5% above where I needed to be at bare minimum. So I was really happy about that, and getting a classification meant that I could start setting goals for myself this season. Now, initially my goal was going to be this season, or this upcoming season, I wanted to shoot and achieve the next letter grade up. And this, in the back of my mind, I was thinking I was going to get D, so that my goal for this season was to reach C class. Well, now that I see that I'm C class, I think reaching B this season may be a bit ambitious. So I've revised my goals a little bit. While making B class by the end of the season would be really nice, I think I'm setting the bar a little too high, so I'm not going to set my sights on getting B. What I do want to do, on the other hand, is score in the top 50% of all the matches that I shoot, or average out the top 50% of all the matches that I shoot. So it's kind of tough, and setting this goal for myself may push me into the next classification ranking or get me closer, because not only am I comparing my shooting to the rest of the C-class shooters, I'm comparing my shooting to everyone. So I'm sort of throwing my hat in the ring and and judging myself based on the performance of everyone's shooting production division. So that means unclassified shooters, D-class shooters, C-class shooters, B-class shooters that are shooting better than me, A-class shooters, which are shooting a hell of a lot better than me, and Master and Grandmaster, which are just way, way out of my league. So depending on who shows up for the match, I could theoretically be setting the bar really, really high here too. However, I think this goal is achievable. If I take all of my scores at the end of the season and average them out, I want to see myself in the top 50% of all of these matches. So that's kind of where my goals are at for the season. Now, even though trying to achieve the top 50% may be a bit ambitious, there are a couple of things that are tipping the scales in my favor. The first is that I've joined a shooting team. A couple of guys that were, well, I was one of those couple of guys, but there were a few of us that were getting together pretty much every match and shooting together. Me, buddy Scott, and two of his friends, Rich and Dave. We'd get together at these matches and we'd shoot as sort of a group. And Scott had the idea, well, why not just form like an easygoing, relaxed sort of shooting team, and we'll kind of push ourselves to do better throughout the course of the season. I thought, well, that's a great way to improve your shooting if you've got people that are pushing you in a friendly manner and helping you shoot better. Only good can come of it. So I thought, wow, this is a great idea. I really like this. We'll get together, off weekends or something every now and again. We'll practice together. We'll give each other pointers. We'll sort of analyze how we're shooting, and ultimately this should help us shoot better. And I thought, this is great. Well, after we formed this very loose sort of shooting team, Scott was talking to a guy that was doing some custom Duracoat work on his gun, and got us a sponsor, which really shocked me, because here we are, a group of guys that are really sort of going at this very loosely, and we were able to find someone that was willing to help us even further our goals of shooting better, and decided to sponsor us. He's providing some ammunition so that I can shoot more, which is awesome. He's covering some match fees, which is awesome. Easing the financial burden of shooting more matches is always great. And in exchange, he's giving us some custom Duracoat work, and the sort of having a gunsmith at your beck and call is great in the event that your gun ever goes down. So because we have someone that's willing to help us and sponsor us along the way, it's also pushes me in the back of my mind. I want to shoot better for him. He's really laid back and says that he doesn't really care where we place as long as we have fun and we present ourselves in a professional manner and have a laid back, positive approach to promoting his product, wearing his shirt, things like that. He's happy, and I'm happy that that's all he's asking of us. But at the same time, I want to push myself. I want to shoot better to I don't know, maybe grab a little more attention by shooting better, and in turn helping promote his product. So the sponsorship thing is fantastic. I just never expected something like that to happen 5 matches into the season for me. But it's going to make next season really exciting. I'm hoping to shoot at the very least 1 match per month. I'm really looking into reloading at this point. I'm doing some research. I'm reading the ABCs of reloading. I'm trying to determine how I want to get involved with reloading, whether I want to go with a single stage press versus a turret press versus a progressive. And I'm window shopping for a press. If I can get all set up and start reloading by the start of the season, I could probably amp that up to 2 matches throughout the season, or 2 matches per month. If reloading reduces the cost as much as some people say it does, I may even be able to squeak in 3 matches on the odd month. Still shooting probably 2 on average, maybe squeaking out a third every now and again would be awesome, but I don't know how well that's going to work out. But that's kind of where I'm at as far as my goals are concerned with the upcoming USPSA season. If you have any advice on me for reloading, I'd love to hear it, because I've never done it before. I've never seen it done in person, and I'm sort of flying blind here, learning from a book and window shopping for a press on my own. So any advice you can give me would be awesome. And that is pretty much where we're at for the discussion topic of the episode. Well, before I get into the part of the show where I close it out and say goodbye and all that, it kind of dawned on me that in all that rambling that I just did, I failed to mention the sponsor's name. So for that, I apologize. And the sponsor is Troy and Missy Dando of Custom Gun Finishes. They do custom Duracoat work. They do some other refinishing, both like wood stock as well as refinishing metal parts of guns. And I had the opportunity to see some of their work, and it looked really good. I'm trying to maybe get up to Troy's shop with a little flip cam and maybe conduct a bit of an interview to do on a future podcast, which I think would be great. I would love to maybe talk him into walking me through step by step the process of refinishing a gun. I think it would be pretty cool. I really don't know a lot about it, and I'm sure there are people out there that would find it pretty interesting. Personally, I find it really interesting, but I would consider it a personal favor if you headed over to Facebook and searched for Custom Gun Finishes LLC. When you pull up their page, do me a favor and click like, and help them bolster their Facebook likes. And if you're in a Facebook liking mood, you can head over to Walt in PA on Facebook and like me as well. So with all that said, and now we're at the end of the podcast. It's kind of funny because now things start to get better. My congestion's gone. My head is clear. That it was painful to watch that last part because I just seemed kind of far out there. I guess partially because of the congestion, but I don't really want to go back and re-record it. So we're just going to kind of let it be. So, of course, things are looking up. It's the last, 2 minutes of the show. I burned through that horribly misfigured, torn apart wrapper on the cigar, and, I'm just dealing with a small hole at the cap. So what do you know? Cigar gets better, my congestion goes away, and it's time to wrap up the show. I guess that's just how some things work. So, now we can get into that whole goodbye part. So, I want to thank you for watching episode 24 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of Walt in PA. I realize it's probably been a little painful with all the troubles that I've had going on this episode. So if you've made it this far, you are my hero this week, and I really do thank you for sitting through. I don't normally like to say sitting through because it sort of implies that the podcast sucks and it's been work getting this far, but looking back, I've had some battles this episode, so I want to thank you for sitting through this episode, and I promise I'll try to do better next time. If you have any suggestions for the show, you'd like to send me a question, a comment, you would like to talk about something you heard on the show, you can do it in a variety of ways. You can email me at walt@waltinpa.com. Through that email address, you can send me a big long email, really short email. You can also include audio files if you would like me to play something on the show. If you want to do a video response on YouTube or something, send me a link and I'll try to pull it and incorporate it into the podcast. I can't make any promises because I'm not quite sure how pulling video from YouTube is going to work and trying to insert it into this iMovie project. But at any rate, there is my email address. You can also reach me on the Gun Rights Radio Network forum. I have a Shooting the Breeze section where I try to post a new topic for each episode, including a link back to the show notes and stuff. But you can feel free to openly discuss the episode there. If you'd like to contact me on Twitter, I am at Walt W. I'm also on Facebook and Google Plus as Walt White. And again, as I said earlier, I have a Facebook page for the blog, not necessarily for the podcast, but I post blog-related stuff on the page, and that is Walt in PA. Just search it on Facebook and click on like. So that's going to do it for this episode. So again, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time. Catch you later. I really need to script an ending because I hate the last 3 episodes have just gone horribly wrong at the tail end. So, I will catch you later. Happy smoking, happy shooting, all that good stuff. Bye.
You can hear Gun Rights Radio Network on Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher allows you to listen to your favorite shows directly from your iPhone, Android phone, BlackBerry, or Palm phones, on demand and on the go. Don't have Stitcher? Download it for free today at Stitcher.com or in the app stores. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. Gun Rights Radio Network shows can be found under Sources.